And I stand on a stage in front of these people and I see the 2, 3, 4, 5 people in an audience. And I literally try to see them. I mean, I can see it happen in front of me. Often it's accompanied by tears. There's definitely some emotion. But I see people in the moment realize that they need a new job, that the place they work hasn't felt right for lots of reasons, that they've been unable to put their finger on. And here I am, some stranger they don't know, standing on a stage, and it's all of a sudden, ding, 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 the light goes off, that their core beliefs are totally incongruent at the place that they work.
Did you know that 53% of Americans are unhappy in their current position? Which is kind of not like a surprising stat to me. But when I started diving deeper into the idea of leadership and why people are unhappy, I stumbled upon this article on Forbes' website titled 10 Shocking Workplace Stats You Need to Know, written by David Sturt and Todd Nordstrom. So I'll read a couple of these and just let you guys know. A recent study by CareerBuilder.com shows that a whopping 58% of managers said that they didn't receive any management training. Which, all right, so if they have a degree, if they don't have a degree, that kind of makes sense. Number 2, Leah Branham, author of The 7 Hidden Reasons Employees Leave, revealed that 89% of bosses believe employees quit because they want more money, when in actuality, it's only 12% of them really leave because of money issues. Talk about having no clue. Let's see. A Harvard Business Review survey reveals 58% of people say that they trust strangers more than their own boss. That is shocking. That you would trust a stranger over your boss. That's nuts. And then lastly, I'll read 2 more. Global studies reveal that 79% of people who quit their jobs cite lack of appreciation, which I can definitely see that. Definitely. And then lastly, American workers forfeited nearly 50% of their paid vacation in 2017. That is crazy statistics. And the reason why I wanted to read them is because today's guest, Brian Burkhart, that's kind of his niche, right? Like, he is the CEO of SquarePlanet, and he has coached leaders of Fortune 500 companies, TED speakers, Shark Tank contestants, and countless business owners, and he helps them communicate and ultimately lead the way that they've always imagined. I'm excited about today's guest. I'm excited about our conversation, so let's get after it. This is Your Superior Self, episode 95, Stand for Something, with author and CEO Brian Burkhart. Once you figure out your core beliefs, you have a responsibility. Seriously, you have no choice. You have to get out there. You owe it to yourself and the world to stand for something. It would be disingenuous to hold back once you know what lies underneath your actions. You aren't serving yourself, your customers, or your employees if you keep your beliefs deep and hidden. You have to be bold, and that starts right now. And that excerpt was taken from the book Stand for Something, written by today's guest, Brian Burkhart. That excerpt is a powerful one. And you don't know how many times I've recorded this line right here. Like, it is insane. Like, I want to get this perfect, and I want to make sense to you. And so I recorded something earlier today. I didn't like it. It took me like 10 takes. I thought on it, I meditated on it, because I wanted this message to be strong. It's actually 8 o'clock, 8:40, and I've had a couple beers, and I've cleared my mind, and I've really narrowed down my message that I want to explain. For years, we've been in systems, in schools, where we've been influenced by the industrious revolution. We've been told what to do, what not to wear, how to act, to be quiet, to stay in the line, and to be like everybody else. That is why when you find out your core values, you have to take a stand. That is why you have to make noise. That is why you have to be different. Because we, as a society, are trained to be like everybody else. And how you're going to be different, how you're going to make an impact is by being who you are and by taking a stand for something. It's not following the line leader. It's being the line leader. It's being unapologetically you. Whatever that may be, have the confidence, have the courage to be you. Don't be scared. Don't care what others may say or do behind your back. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you're doing what you want to do and that you're happy. It took me a long time to... It might sound like a simple message, but it took me a long time to come up with that because it's so important to me. The message behind the podcast isn't to make millions of dollars and have millions of downloads. It's to make you aware of the people that are out there that are doing great things, that are changing the world. One book at a time, one step at a time, one mission at a time, whatever. It's to bring you awareness to others that are great people and to share their story. And today's guest, Brian Burkhart, is doing that. He's standing for what he believes in. And that's what our conversation is about. Standing up for what you believe in and believing in yourself and being authentic and not apologizing for that. Be who you are. Don't be afraid. Put yourself out there, be vulnerable, and I promise you doors will open. But before we get into the interview or the conversation, I just want to say you guys can reach out to me on all social media platforms. You can leave me a message. Let me know how you guys are doing. I'm on Instagram at tdowns80 and on Twitter at downstrey. You can go to yoursuperiorself.com and leave me a message over there if you want to. I really want to know what you guys are up to. Like, what are you doing? Like, what is it that you want to do in your lives? Like, it could be as simple as just moving, exercising more, or I don't know. I don't care. Like, let me know. I really want to know what you guys are up to. I love hearing about your stories. I love hearing about your motivations, what inspires you, what doesn't, whatever. Like, you guys are amazing. Check me out over there on all social media platforms. Follow me. Leave me some comments. I love hearing from you guys. It's awesome. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Brian Burkhart. Remember, guys, stand for something. Stand for something that matters to you and be authentic to that and be unapologetic. Be you. All right, guys, here we go. What is up, Superior Nation? Welcome back to Your Superior Self. Tonight I am joined with Brian Burkhart, author of Stand for Something. Brian, brother, welcome to the show.
It's awesome to be here, Trey. Thanks for having me.
So why don't you go ahead and give everybody an update about what you're up to today?
I have a lot of moving parts in my world. I mean, that's a big question for a guy like me. So more than anything else, what I'm up to is about making waves. The reason I exist, what my companies are all about, what we do is to make waves. And I'm out here in the desert. I'm in Phoenix. And so those are not of the aquatic variety. The waves that I make are really about helping our clients take their most important messages, whatever those might be, and elevating them in a way so that people remember and act. And I want you to think about that for a second. We want to take the most important message, elevate it so people remember and act. Unfortunately, all of us have heard and seen and done so many things, and very frequently it's in one ear, out the other, and we don't do anything with that info. That's exactly the opposite of what we're all about. So when we make waves, we're going to do it through all kinds of different means, different tools, different methods, different methodologies to take those messages, elevate them to make it stick, and then make people do something with that info. It's pretty cool stuff.
So why do you think that is, though? Like, I've been to a lot of conferences. I've been to a couple talks. It's like you leave inspired, but then, after a day or two, it leaves you.
I think there's lots of reasons, and I'm glad that you've been to places where you've actually been inspired. That is often not the case. Typically, it's pretty benign, vanilla stuff. There she is. There's your little girl. She's up and at 'em. More often than not, though, I think the reason that is that people are afraid of being judged. The truth of the matter is people listen to this podcast, they're immediately judging both you and I. They're thinking about the timbre of our voice, the things we say, the pattern in which we say them. And that is just a natural human part of the equation. And so what often happens is, in the face of being judged, what we do is dilute ourselves into the safest, most safe, boring, vanilla, plain Jane spot in an attempt to be accepted and welcomed. And the reality is that it's actually typically the very opposite. If you think about those people that have quite literally changed the world, both the individuals and the brands, the things that move the needle, they're the outliers. They're the people who go their own way, who forge a new path, who beat a different drum, and they could give a damn about what the world thinks about them. And so what I have made my career really around, the center of this notion of making waves, is helping people in all kinds of different ways within the world of corporate America find their own true authentic voice in a way that really works. It's not about being lampoonish and crazy. It's about being authentic to who you truly are. And when you get that right, it really changes the game.
Well, how did it start for you? Like, how did you get into this arena of, public speaking, authoring a book,
running businesses, all the stuff I do.
this.
Yeah. It really goes way back. I mean, I can tell you that I remember more than anything else, the first big one. I was in 5th grade at Oak Ridge Elementary School, just outside Chicago, and I was going to run for student council president as a 6th grader. And I can remember being in front of my entire school, and I got up in front of the lectern, and it had one of those gooseneck mics, and I was little. I'm still a short guy. I pull the gooseneck mic all the way down. The whole audience laughs at me, kind of with me, and then I do a speech. And while I'm doing the speech in front of my entire group of peers, I knew right then and there that I won. I knew it, and I did, actually. And it was one of those things that stuck with me at a really early age of the power of communication. And so I was lucky to have a couple of God-given gifts in that arena. But then right there, when I felt that thing, I knew that that was going to be a part of my world for a long time. It's something that I've then honed the craft. I've put in the time. I know both the art and the science of it, but it really started at a very, very early age. And then as I got deeper into my career, what I really realized I was doing was putting words into people's mouths to make them look and sound great. I was behind the scenes, and that was actually even more fulfilling. It's a little bit like having a kid, I would guess, and seeing your kid do something. And so while it was with clients, having them experience a profound change, being able to be far superior than they were before, was the most gratifying thing I'd ever done. And so it's been a combination of a lot of parts, but all the different things I do really are either me helping others look good or being in a position myself where I can see others be affected. And so it's a very empowering thing I get to do every day. It's cool.
Oh, yeah, that is awesome. I think empowerment is something that we all have the potential to do for one another. And I think that a lot of people choose not to just because of the society that we live in now, right? Like, I mean, I feel like we don't speak enough to each other. Technology, headphones, headsets, conference calls. I mean, I feel like a lot of the time we're in our own little world, and we don't give enough, one-on-one time with each other. But when you can empower somebody, like when you have the authentic moment where you can empower someone, like that is the most. It's the most powerful thing that could happen.
It's really an interesting thing. I will tell you that I'm probably right now about 11 pounds heavier than I want to be. And I know that the secret is pretty simple. Eat better, move more. I mean, it's just not that much harder than that. It's true, right? And yet you don't necessarily see me doing a whole lot to shift things, right? I mean, I went out for tacos this afternoon. I'm sure we're going to do something this weekend. It's a long weekend coming up. I mean, I'm not doing the right things, even though I know better. And I think that ultimately, even if you know, it doesn't mean you necessarily do. Those that are truly superior, those that are really best, are the ones that know and then do. And I like to get that right in the vast majority of my life. I definitely screwed up on my physical fitness, but I would encourage people that if they think they know that they should be doing something, well, darn it, get out there and actually do it.
Going back to the empowerment thing, is there a story or a moment where you were teaching somebody that you had that that pure feeling of empowerment, like where you were teaching somebody how to be better, how to be their superior selves, like, and tell us what that feeling was like, right? How did that make you feel? I mean, I like to feel like that I do that through the podcast, but to see it happening in front of your face, like, to me, that's something that I yearn for.
I actually have a lot of stories around this, and I'll tell you, it's about the coolest thing that I'm ever a part of. I get the beautiful fortune, if you will, of often being asked to speak on large stages at conferences, industry events, that kind of a thing. And, you get anywhere between 3 and 1,000 people in a room. You're going to start seeing people react, sometimes good, sometimes bad. And one of the main presentations that I give, it really correlates nicely with my book, but it's about this notion that you need to know what it is you stand for, what your core beliefs as a human being are. And it's based in this notion of science that your beliefs lead to your actions. Things like, if I believed that my body was my temple, I wouldn't have gone out for tacos today, and I would have absolutely gone to the gym. And so this notion of beliefs leading to actions is big. And when I talk about it on stage, I often get to the notion of the place that people work, and they as individuals often are at odds with their core beliefs. They are incongruent. And I stand on a stage in front of these people, and I see the 2, 3, 4, 5 people in an audience, and I literally try to see them. I mean, I can see it happen in front of me. Often it's accompanied by tears. There's definitely some emotion, but I see people in the moment realize that they need a new job, that the place they work hasn't felt right for lots of reasons, that they've been unable to put their finger on. And here I am, some stranger they don't know, standing on a stage, and it's all of a sudden, ding, 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 the light goes off, that their core beliefs are totally incongruent at the place that they work. That is an incredible thing, because there's always a line of people at the end waiting to talk to me, and those people are always at the end. They wait the longest, and they get filled with emotion, and they say things like, what do I do now? And it's really empowering. It's great to be able to help them find a better path, to find a job that fits and feels so much better. And so that's happened to me a lot. That's just one example. There's a lot of those kind of things. And then I coached a guy today, really, really smart, good dude. I mean, this is a 40-something-year-old, senior level exec, master's degree, great life. Literally, he was in tears because we were working on putting together the words that fit what he actually stands for. And when you finally put those words together, when you finally can put your finger on it, man, it changes everything. So I actually have a lot of parts of my world that are about empowering people. So it's a tough question for me to answer quickly.
Yeah. I want to unpack that. Like, what were his words of empowerment or his values?
It was interesting. I'll tell you, it was, I wish I had my notes. I'd be able to give this a little bit better context, but he said things that were very almost corporate speak. And the more we unpacked it, the more I kept saying, no, you're getting it wrong. Like, I'll give you one. He was essentially saying that he believed in the development of people and about training people and leaving his door open and all these things that feel very corporate. And the more we got into it, his name is Rich. I said, Rich, what you really are saying is that your value, the thing you stand for, the thing you believe in, is that in general, people matter. And where I really got him is I started asking him questions. I kept saying things like, so if you see a homeless person on the street, I get it. You're not going to walk up to everyone that you see and hand them a 20. But on many occasions, my hunch is you will hand $1. And more importantly, you're going to look that person in the eye, maybe shake their hand, maybe even give them a hug. And right then he was like, yeah, totally. And what that was, it was one of those moments that a little thing, remember this idea, beliefs lead to actions. We were able to look at his action and help deduce his core belief. And that idea of not just I want to develop people is very different than people matter. And so if he's at an organization where you're just a number, where all they care about is the bottom line, all of a sudden people are lower on the hierarchy. Well, that's not going to be a good fit. And that's exactly what we unpacked today. He's at a place, big money financial services shop, all they care about is the bottom line. So he's got to go. The incongruence is too big for him to stick around.
What's like some techniques that people can use if they feel like they're in the same position where they can kind of change their attitude towards people matter, right? Like personal or not personal development, but I guess that is part of that too. But developing people, Like, how do you change that to people matter? Like, what's one technique they can use?
This is going to sound like a plug, but I don't really mean it, because it is just so easy, is buy my book. So in my book, I talk about this exact thing. It's called a sidewinder technique. And really what it's about is creating a story to develop around that initial thought or that core narrative. And it's one of those kind of things that it's just not obvious. And while it's relatively simple, it does not smack you in the face as obvious. And so the notion around whatever it is that you fundamentally stand for, it doesn't live unless you make it come alive. And the way you do that is by giving it a story.
That's pretty powerful, man. I like that idea that people come first, right? And it's hard. It's hard for corporate guys who have been in these, I guess, the corporate world for a long time. They have these ideas that have been passed down on them. They have these target words, right? They have all these the same words that they've been using for 30 years, like motivation, mindset, accountability, all of those key words that they use in presentations. But when you change it up and make it so that people actually matter, now it's kind of like a personal feeling, right? Like a personal touch that you try to apply to your company.
I'll tell you a quick story. I was this was maybe 3 weeks ago, tops. I was doing a presentation to the American Medical Association, which is a humongous association. And they represent everything from a lowly resident to a huge hospital full of physicians. And if you just kind of boil it down, their job is to be advocates for the people that provide healthcare. It's a tough gig, right? Especially as healthcare changes. And I was walking through a couple of parts of this equation, and I said, if time, money, all those things are non-issues, if you've got all the bandwidth in the world and you're sick and you want to get better, what are a couple places that you may want to go to get treated? And immediately everyone yells out the same things, and they're all the expected. It was Mayo, Cleveland Clinic, etc. Of course, I knew that was going to happen, and so I had visuals to support it. And I said, let me show you how Mayo and Cleveland Clinic tell the world in their website why they exist, the stuff that they stand for. And as you could almost guess here, it was absolute hot garbage. It was all of these sort of facts and figures. The one that was the best, the one that I used, was at Cleveland. It had these sort of 6 categories, if you will, that were these ridiculously vanilla words like integrity and ethics and all of these things that you hear all the time in corporate world. And what I showed was those 6 things that were directly pulled from the Mayo website, designed by Mayo. And I pulled all the Mayo stuff out, and I put it over a group of FedEx drivers. I pulled it and put it over a group of NASA engineers and astronauts. I pulled it and put it over a bunch of people working at Domino's Pizza. And then I finally pulled it and put it over my beloved Chicago Bears. And I said, it's still appropriate in all 4 instances. These words are so vanilla. They are so safe that it matters and means literally nothing. I then said, let me show you out west, Oakland, California-based Kaiser Permanente, perhaps the most forward-thinking healthcare company on the planet. And on the front of their web page, the very first thing, top left corner, it says YKP, as in Kaiser Permanente. You click it, and it said, because healthcare isn't an industry, it's a cause. Oh, gold. That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. If you believe that healthcare isn't an industry, a money-making beast behemoth of death, but actually a thing that you believe deeply in helping and serving others, then maybe you shouldn't work at Mayo or Cleveland. In fact, you should be working at Kaiser. And so it's so powerful when people get it right. It's the biggest thing that companies get wrong when I see them from all sorts of marketing and presentations. But overall, that ability to get that core belief really well codified and then really comfortable to speak it loudly, man, that's big, Trey. That's a big deal.
Absolutely. Finding your why, right? You talk about that in your book.
That's what it's all about. That's exactly it. It's know what your core beliefs are, know what you stand for.
Well, how can you do that, right? Like, I feel like I'm struggling with that a little bit, right? So somebody who's doing a podcast or somebody who's doing some personal development with other people, maybe a coach, and they're trying to find their why. I mean, just let's say for instance, helping other people. Like, yeah, that's a great why, but do you have to be more niche than that?
It certainly has to be just absolutely 1,000% authentic. It cannot be a fake marketing bupkis kind of thing. It's got to be real. And the actual techniques of how to do it are multifaceted. But the two things I tell people the most is, one, know that you can reverse engineer. And now this is a really simple concept, but it's not necessarily easy. Reverse engineering is essentially taking something that already exists and breaking it backwards into its little bits to see where it came from. What I always tell people is, remember that idea that I brought up a few moments ago of cognitive psychology theory. If we know that your beliefs lead to your actions, we can reverse engineer this thing. We can codify the things you do, your actions, to figure out what it is you believe. I'll give you an example, and it might be ever so controversial, but you'll get it. It's things like guns. Guns are a big deal right now, right? And if you believe deeply in the Second Amendment, if you believe in owning guns, your action is likely to do just that, be a gun owner. But if you believe the Second Amendment is flawed, that it's been stoic and stuck in time, if you believe guns are bad, your actions dictate that you're really likely to not own a gun. Your beliefs lead to your actions. And so again, we can reverse engineer. And so you can start looking at the things you do on a regular basis. You can look at the way you do business or conduct yourself. You can look at the things that you spend your time on every day. And I just start journaling those things. I mean, it's like literally get a yellow legal pad kind of thing and just start jotting down the things you do. Like, I'll give you an example. I did my podcast a couple of weeks ago with a guy that I had never met before. I sent him a thank you note, and after it was over, I was like, I really like you, dude. We should go have dinner, which is a weird thing. I mean, it's unusual for grown men who have never met each other to say things like, you know what, let's go have dinner. Well, today, like an hour ago, we confirmed our wives and the two of us are going out for a dinner this coming Saturday night. I believe deeply in relationships. I could have figured that out based on my actions of asking a stranger, a grown man who I don't know, to go have dinner. But my actions reveal my beliefs. So that's one way, and that's the easiest way. The other way is to get a little help. And the way that's done is by using something called archetypes. Archetypes exist in the world of brand marketing and have been around for a long, long time. And I'll give you an example. It's things like people that are mavericks, people that are willing to buck the trend. That is an archetype. People that are more sort of studious or want all the facts. Scientist, that would be an archetype. Someone who comes in and saves the day at the 11th hour and makes something happen. That's a wizard or a magician. That's an archetype. If you just use Google, there are a bunch of sources online that show you the wide variety. And you could pick, there's a variety of camps, but anywhere between, let's call it 20 and 60 some archetypes. When you start seeing those individual characteristics and then some examples of those kind of archetypes, man, is it revealing, because it all of a sudden says, oh, that's me. And you're probably some kind of morphed hybrid of multiple archetypes. But that will help lead to understanding what it is, the things you really stand for. If you come out as a magician archetype, you realize that what you believe in is sort of saving the day, of pulling a rabbit out of the proverbial hat and making something come alive at the 11th hour. That's kind of a core belief. And so it really helps to have that reverse engineering process as well as archetypes to figure out what it is you might be standing for.
Yeah. I mean, the whole belief leads to action thing, right? Like I want to unpack that for a minute.
Yeah.
I feel like in society and where I grew up, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, it was like my actions were based on a set of beliefs that I had grew up learning, right? And that's why you get into, like, you know, America's so diverse right now. It's so, you know, it's divided because of our belief systems, right? And society pressures us to have these beliefs, and we don't necessarily take it upon ourselves to learn for ourselves, right? So we end up acting on a belief system that has been forced on us. And I'm a big believer in, like, just because society says you're supposed to act a certain way, you're supposed to go get a 9 to 5, or let me back up. You graduate high school, you go to college, you get a 9 to 5, you get married, you have kids, blah, 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 and so forth. Just because society says that's what you're supposed to do doesn't necessarily mean that that's right for you, right? Like, I feel like so many people are unhappy and are just miserable. You know, I think it's like 80% of the workforce are just, unhappy in their careers. I think it's because we don't take the time to learn who we are, and we don't take the time to invest in ourselves and learn what we like and what we dislike, it's automatically we're put into the system that society says that is our next step, and it's like we don't take the time to really learn and educate ourselves, so that way we can create a new belief system and a whole new set of actions.
Well, you are speaking my language. I got to tell you that this is exactly why I wrote my book. And so I always say it from the standpoint, and I'm pretty quick to get on this soapbox. So if I do, just kick me. But essentially, I say all the time, there is no script. So my wife and I, we don't have any kids, which means we get to parent our nieces and nephews and the kids around us in a little bit different way. But it is parenting. I have a nephew who is 1 year removed from graduating from the University of Iowa. And he had a degree in communications, which really means he had a degree in doing that much, right? And so I remember saying to him something along the lines of, take a gap year, go to Europe, go see some things. Don't think that there's a script that says you must leave the University of Iowa, go get a job at a company that you don't really care much about, doing something that you have absolutely zero experience in, and somehow think that this is going to make you a happy guy. There is nothing that says you have to do this. And if you're worried about money, stop. There's an infinite supply and tons of ways to find money. And so it was one of these kind of things that I tried to jar him out of the slumber that is the well-defined road that damn near everybody takes. My whole reason for being is to make waves. And so I'm the guy that's going to absolutely say, do not just follow that path. We talk about it all the time around here. It's actually on our wall. We have a big, huge mural when you come into our lobby of my office, and it shows these buffalo going over a cliff. In Gallatin County, Montana, there's a state park called Buffalo Jump State Park. And it was an amazing find that archaeologists found, was this ridiculous number of old fossilized and really even not that deep bones of bison. And after much study, what they realized is that it was a big Native American hunting ground, that without guns and without being on horseback, the native Lakota, that's with an L, Indians, were able to hunt bison by forcing them to go over this cliff. And after much due diligence, what the archaeologists figured out was that the bison simply reacted in a herd mentality. They just went forward, 1 foot in front of the other, following the butt in front of them, quite literally over the cliff to their death. And I'm afraid that far too many people, far too many corporations, they just do the same thing. They just follow the masses. And the reason it's on our wall is for everyone that walks in, both employees, but certainly our clients. It's to say, if you're going to work with us, if you're going to spend some time with me and my team, we are going to absolutely be the ones that look up. We are looking for the cliff that you may not be even acknowledging exists. And I think you are nailing it, that the world we live in today somehow, some way dictates something, and yet it really doesn't exist. That script isn't there. That dictate isn't real. It's imaginative, and it's ridiculous. And so I struggle with the way our society is built today. I really look around, and I'm depressed more frequently than I care to admit, because people aren't looking up. They're not seeing the cliff, and it's real.
No, I agree. I think that, growing up, when I was in college, back in the day, I felt stressed out all the time because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I remember coming home from Delaware and just missing home a lot, and didn't really have, I majored in biology, which was a mistake because I wanted to be a pediatrician. Why? Because I thought that I was good with kids and I wanted to be a doctor, and they made money, blah, blah, blah. And I got into, University of Delaware, majored in biology. And then after the second semester, I was like, this is not for me. And I felt like a loser. I just felt like I had no direction. And then I transferred south to another school, and I was even more clueless there. I was lost and didn't really know what direction I wanted to go in. And that's when I ultimately ended up quitting and doing other avenues and experiences. But for that amount of time, like, I just was lost, and I felt like, I don't know, I felt like everybody was watching me. I felt like everybody was judging my next move, and it was just so uncomfortable because society was saying, what are you doing? You're not doing what the plan is. You're not following that. And I'm here to tell you that if you're in that situation right now, let's say you're in college right now, you're between 18 and 21, and I think I think today it might be a little bit different. I'm not too sure just because of the age gap a little bit, but I'm telling you right now, like, take your time, be patient, learn who you are, learn what you like, learn what you dislike, because this is life, right? Like, you need to live your life. You need to enjoy it. When you get out of school, like, work some odd end jobs. Don't necessarily jump into your career. Just figure out what you want to do. Like, there's so many ways to make money.
Boy, do I agree. And I'll tell you, it's actually perhaps worse than people are willing to actually admit. So I'll tell you a couple little quick things. One, just stop with social media, people. And feel free to stay on and post and do things, yes, but stop believing that it's true. It's a lot like reality TV. It's fake, people. This is the kind of thing where there's, how many different posts about people that have used toilet seats to fake the view out the window of the airplane. I mean, the life of the Kardashians it's unreal. No, that's, 1 in 1 gazillion live that life. And yet somehow, some way, we ascribe that sort of way and that style of being is what ours should be. And yet it's wholly false. So that's one, is just don't follow the herd, the masses, by somehow thinking that social media is leading you towards truth. It's not. Number two, I would tell you that you got to get into your craft a little bit. So I'll tell you a story about a former employee of mine who's one of my more favorite people on the planet. His name is Max Parcell. He was a writer for us for a while. And unfortunately, when we moved our company to Arizona, he wanted to stay in Chicago, which I fully understand. And so I tried to recruit him to come here. And while he thought about it, ultimately he stayed back. But we're still very close friends. And I actually just saw him, and we talked about this. When Max interviewed for a position at my firm, he had a grand total of 0 experience as a writer. None. I think his degree was in something totally different, and he worked at a logistics firm getting things like cases of Pepsi shipped across country on big trucks. That's legitimately what he did. But because he knew that he wanted to get out of that and really end up being a writer, he worked on his craft on the side. And so he created a website, and he wrote these long-form blogs about both fictional and non-fictional things, and he actually performed the things he loved doing, writing, in a way that was very public, knowing full well it could be judged, but ultimately to essentially keep his blade sharp so that when an opportunity arose, he could say, yeah, I'm not a writer, but I write. And so a guy like me, I looked at it and I was like, this is my kind of guy. I love this kid. And he was super smart and super able, and it became very clear that he would be the right guy for our firm. And he was perhaps the single most influential employee that I've ever had the pleasure of working with, because he was so authentic to who he was. But you wouldn't know that by his major or his resume. He had to work on his craft on the side. And so for me, I think it starts with one, having really good self-awareness, knowing who you are, the things you really want, and then pursuing it, even if it doesn't pay the bills. Do it for the right reasons, not for the wrong ones.
No, I agree. I think, well, one thing that I've been noticing lately is people using the word authentic. And I agree with you. I 100% agree with you. But I've been getting asked through my community and on the side, how do you live authentically? And how do you present that in the professional world? And how do you present that in your personal life?
That's a big one. I would tell you that it's perhaps the hardest thing that I get to do, but probably the hardest thing that most people get to do. And I talk about authenticity all the time. It's actually the final chunk of my book. It's a big, big deal. I have this like a granite square. I mean, it's literally chiseled rock in my office that talks, my individual office that talks about authenticity. And so I have it in front of me all the time. I think what it comes down to more than anything, Trey, it's a choice. I think you get a choice to be who you are and how you want to be perceived. And it's not always easy. And so once you know what you believe, what you stand for, it certainly helps. So for a guy like me, who's built a whole career in a couple of organizations with a group of people dedicated to making waves, it's easy for me to be a little bit of a troublemaker. It's easy for me to push back and say, nope, sorry, not going to do it that way. And so that's really authentic because I have made my core beliefs super loud, super clear, and I'm proud of them. For others, if they don't know, you're just trying to fit in. And so you all of a sudden live in a space that may not feel authentic on the inside, but it looks fine on the outside. And so that incongruence is really the rub that I talk about at length. So for me, to truly be full, authentic, true to yourself, living the life you want to lead, I think it starts really with knowing what it is you're all about. And that's not easy. I mean, that takes some deep work. I get the bonus of I get to go home to an amazing, amazing, amazing wife who also happens to be a psychotherapist and an executive coach. And so I have chances to talk to her at length about this kind of stuff. And I would tell you that I get the bonus. Others might want to have to, look at it from the lens of, is this something I should do? And my answer is yes, run. If it helps, it helps. End of story.
Yeah, I think, dude, it's like we don't know who we are anymore because of social media. Right? Like we look at everybody on Facebook.
Totally true.
We look at people on Instagram, we look on Twitter, and we're so glued to it. We start like mirroring their lifestyles, right? We start picking up their beliefs. We don't want to go against the grain, because once you start going against the grain, what happens? You start getting the trolls that come after you. You start getting the negative feedback come after you. You start, if you believe in something totally different, it's fake news. I mean, it's insane. Like you have to detach from that. It's almost like what I've started doing is I've started going for long runs, and I'm trying to get out of wearing headphones. I'm trying to just be with myself and learn who I am, so that way I can be the most authentic me. Maybe try that. I don't know, whatever works for you. But I think that social media it's like we're blurring lifestyles.
Oh, boy, do I agree. Let's talk about something, and it could be controversial. And I think that's maybe why it's so great. People can choose to say that I'm nuts, but just not too long ago, there was a very public debate about Nike and Colin Kaepernick. And I'm old enough to tell you that I've been around at this point, coming up on 5 full decades. I would tell you that there has been nothing in my life that has been more American than Colin Kaepernick in that debate. If you look at what our true democracy, what our Constitution is all about, it's the notion that even if something boils your blood, you better allow it to be fully exposed. That's its inherent right. And so there were a whole lot of people that said, I'm never going to wear Nike again. I'm going to light these logos on fire. These people are horrible. And he specifically is absolutely wrong, awful. He's the devil. He should burn, etc. What Colin Kaepernick did, I'm telling you, took guts. He has everything to lose by making that certain stand. And that's what authenticity looks like. It's being able to say, this is what I'm all about, take it or leave it. And he has, let's call it, easy math here, 50% of the people in his camp and 50% of the people against him. That's something. I mean, who wants to be a guy that says, everywhere I go, half of the people hate me? That takes some cojones, right? And so when you look at it from the standpoint of things like social media, or even the way we handle ourselves at the office, or, even in our personal lives with our friends or neighbors, whatever, we often say or do or act in ways that are not truly authentic because we don't want to have people judge us poorly or think things bad or whatever it is. It takes some stuff to stand there and take the fire. And so whether you believe it, don't believe it, agree with it, don't agree with it, I would ask people to study, objectively speaking, what went down with Colin Kaepernick and Nike. It is some Americana at its best.
Well, I'm always going to be a big fan of Nike just because of the story with Phil Knight. And, I read his book, and I'm a big fan of Nike. That will never, ever change just because
that's a great book.
The story is just phenomenal.
Shoe Dog. It's a great book.
Oh, man. And Colin Kaepernick, I mean, you hit it on the head, right? Like he's doing something that he believes is true, and he's standing up for his ideals. He's standing up for what he believes is right, no matter what, right? And a lot of people won't do that. A lot of people get scared because it goes against the grain. They're going to get made fun of. They're going to get hate mail. They're going to, their friends are going to disown them. Their family are going to disown them. But they believe in their heart that they're right.
This was a million years ago. I mean, I'm old at this point. I remember it's actually pretty great. I'm laughing just thinking about it. I went on a first date with a girl to a baseball game. I lived in Chicago at the time. We went to a White Sox game, and I don't even remember how I met her. But our first date was to a ball game. And I'll put you on the spot here, Trey. What are a couple of things that people eat at a ball game? Go.
Nachos, hot dogs, pretzels.
Bingo, hot dog. Right. There you go. You're nailing it, right? So we go to the ball game. Her name was Sheila. I'm like, let's get some food. We order a couple of hot dogs. She eats it. We have peanuts, beers, have a nice time. We actually dated for a few months. And I eventually found out by date 3 that she was a vegetarian. Now, she was so afraid of what I would think about her being a vegetarian that on a first date, she ate a hot dog. That is like the most ridiculous thing. I mean, perhaps the worst food that a vegetarian could eat too, right? And so you look at that. She did that because she was afraid of how I would judge her. It's the exact opposite of what Colin did. He was willing to put the scarlet letter, essentially, on his chest for truly the rest of his life. I mean, as an old man, he will always be. That's Colin Kaepernick. He's the guy that kneeled. No matter what. I mean, that's not going to go away, ever. And yet that's the thing he was willing to do. Authenticity, it's not easy stuff, man. This takes some doing. But you have to know first and foremost what it is you stand for. That's the key.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, I've been reading this book, Born a Crime by Trevor Noah. Have you read that yet?
The TV guy, Trevor Noah?
Yeah. He's got a book out that it's, about him growing up in South Africa. And the racism that was associated with that down there. I mean, they had apartheid, I think that's what you call it, where races couldn't date each other. Like it was a crime to date other races. Well,
I mean, that's Nelson Mandela's whole thing. I mean, that's, apartheid was the Dutch coming in there, and I mean, it was awful. It was the minority white ruling the majority black. It was tremendously awful.
And I mean, there is just so much hate out there. There's just so much hate that it's like if we just learned how to forgive, and if we just put that all past us, and I mean, we're not on this earth that long, and to have that much hate in our heart, and to put all this energy into things of that nature, like it's mind boggling to me. Like I just, people are like finding things they hate now, and it's like seriously, like there are so many people out there. I mean, there's so much crime. People get robbed all the time. There's so much world hunger. There's a shortage of water. There's just so many things out there that we should be worrying about and try to fix. But yet we're worried about Nike and Colin Kaepernick and issues of that nature. Not to get on down that rabbit hole, but it's like we need to.
I totally agree with you.
We need to wake up.
You're so right. There's a few left. I mean, the numbers are really small. They're dwindling every day, but there are certainly a number of people left who fought in World War II. And you can look at it and go, okay, you got a couple of different sides there. There's obviously the Germans, Russians, but let's look at the Americans and the Japanese. Just a few months ago, my wife and I went to Japan for a few weeks, and I'd never been there before, but I've been to a bunch of countries. And here I am at a place where there are still soldiers alive on both of these countries' shores. And yet we dropped not one, but 2 nuclear bombs on them. The only time nuclear bombs have been dropped in war ever were the Americans dropping them on the Japanese. Never happened any other time. That's real. And yet these people could not have been more kind, more gracious, more welcoming, more open to us. And it wasn't because we were dropping crazy money as tourists. I mean, we were in little places doing little things, and they were just inherently incredibly kind people. I think the lesson to hate is realize that people are people, that people all want the same things. We want love and security and safety and harmony and happiness. We want our kids to grow up and do better things than we did. We want to have moments that are peaceful and full of joy. We can look at the same sunset with the same amount of awe and wonder. People are people. And when we forget that is when hate wins and love loses. End of story.
Yeah, it's easy to hate. It's easy to hate and not forgive somebody. That is, to me, that's the coward's way out, right?
Totally agree. A lot easier to hate than it is to love.
Absolutely. The real men, the real women of this planet love and forgive and are able to put things past them and move on. That's what it's about. moving on, forgiving. Not, Nelson Mandela, going back to that, right? He had the guards that were guarding him when he was elected president, had them over for dinner, and they were asked him why he did that, and he said, if I didn't, I'd still be a prisoner.
It's exactly right. I am pretty horrible at organized religion. I was supposed to be Catholic. That's what I grew up. And my mom still is hardcore. She's 100% Italian descent. I mean, it's like a big thing to her. I suck at it, yes. But a few of the lessons that stuck, one that I always remember is that, at least according to the Bible, Jesus washed the feet of the wretched, of the poor, of the least desirable. Here supposedly is the King of Kings washing the feet of the most bottom of the bottom. I mean, do you need a stronger lesson? That's all you need to know.
Serve, right? Serve. Give your gifts. Give your gifts. Whatever your gifts are, give them. And exactly. You're going to be prosperous.
That's it. No doubt about it.
What do you want your legacy to be?
That's a good question. There's a couple of parts of that. I'll tell you, I actually had a really interesting thing happen. When I did my book launch, I had about 120 people all together. 11 states were represented, a whole bunch of clients that had flown in. I felt like I had died, but was alive and was able to watch and witness sort of the services about me in my life. It was unbelievable. I had a rare thing that most people will never get. And it was just kind of the luck of having this book come out that people were there to support and honor and love. And what I kept hearing over and over and over again, and it was interesting because, I mean, even like my wife was getting this tale all the time of Brian's always so helpful. He's always so generous with his knowledge and his time and all. He's so helpful. And I just think I'm opinionated and loud, but a lot of people think it's actually helpful. And so I think if I had to come up with what my legacy would be is that I moved the needle for some people, that I helped them see things in a new way and actually had them live a fully present, complete life in the ideal way for them, not for society, not for some unfulfilled script that doesn't really exist, but for them as individuals, that they were better, learned, moved forward, call it what you will, by spending a few minutes with me.
I love your book, by the way.
Thanks.
I love the swag that you gave me too. My wife uses the bookmark, and my daughter actually stole the flag that you sent. It's actually an orange flag. This says "Stand for Something," and she immediately goes out and puts it in our yard. So I didn't notice it until I came home the next day, and here's Brian's flag in the front yard. I'm like, I should have. I
love it.
I should have took a picture and sent it to you.
I would have liked that. That would have been great. I would have actually put it on social media. Look at
that. Yeah, man, I think it's very interesting. But going back to the forgiveness thing, like we had talked about Phil Knight and the shoe dog, like he talked about Japan in the book as well, and how he started his first company, Blue Ribbon, and he was selling tigers, and he had talked about it like back when he was growing up. It was it was uneasy for someone of his background, somebody from Oregon, to go to Japan. Like the people just didn't understand why he would want to do that, because it was like they were the Japanese, they had bombed us, and they were worried. Like we were worried, like all the propaganda that we listened to, all the nightly news, blah, 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 the radio stations. And they were like, pumping up this fear. And then he goes over to Japan, and here he is walking in the warehouses, trying to search for factories. And he's seeing the after effects of the bombings, and seeing, melted shoes and things of that nature. And the Japanese people treated him better than some Americans, right? Like some Americans treat their own. I mean, talk about forgiveness. Like they never even thought twice about treating him as their guest, and treated him above and beyond. But here in America, it's like this. I don't even know how to word it. It's like this expectation that somebody does you wrong, like you hold a grudge against them and you don't forgive them because forgiveness is weak. And I'm here to tell you that it's the exact opposite.
You are so right. I know this is going to sound ridiculous, but there's a little thing that Dr. Phil once said that really really struck me when I heard this. And he's a bit of a thing, right? He's made $1 gazillion doing maybe not the greatest of work, but he said, in lots of situations, you have a choice. And your choice is to be right or to be happy. And so would you rather be right or would you rather be happy? I don't know about you, but I'm going to choose happy. And when you stop and look at sort of like even the political divide that's happening right now, people just want to be right. You're wrong, I'm right, end of story. If you look at things like organized religion, half the reason I say I suck at it is because what it comes down to is this notion of my faith is right, you're wrong, and so because you believe something else, I'm going to blow you up. That's been the history of organized religion in a nutshell. That idea of happy or right, man, wouldn't it be great if we just all said, I'd rather be happy. It just feels better to be happy than to be right.
Oh, my God, yeah. I mean, you talk about all the rules and you got to be right and you got to follow them. And especially in the religion sector, it's like, so in Trevor Noah's book, not to get off topic here, but he talks about Catholicism and he talks about how he grew up in a Catholic school and he wasn't allowed to take communion because he wasn't Catholic. And that was one of the rules. And supposedly he's a good, he brings up some great points and he's, argumentative and he was naughty as a little boy. And he goes up to the nuns and he goes up to the priests and he's like, why can't I take, or he got in trouble for something. I think he ate like the whole sacrament or something like that. And he got in trouble and he's like, the nuns were trying to, kick him out of school and he was in trouble. And he's like, why can't I take the sacrament? Why can't I take the Eucharist? And they're like, because you're not Catholic. And he was like, well, what if Jesus was here today? You're going to tell me that Jesus couldn't take the sacrament because he was Jewish? And like, it just kind of flipped the script on me a little bit. Think about that, right? Like we have all these rules in church and spirituality, but you throw in something like that, like you're going to tell me that, if you just think about that for a minute, it kind of changes your perspective that sometimes it isn't about what you've been taught your whole life. Sometimes it's just about that feeling in your heart, right?
I actually have to read this book now because that story really hit me. When I was in probably, let's call it fourth grade, as a kid in the south side of Chicago with an Italian mom, we went to Catholic, it was called CCD. It was like the school you go to, not school, but the Catholic school, like to learn about Catholicism on Saturdays, I think it was. And simultaneously, while doing that, I had to do a report at school on Mount Everest. I remember this like it was yesterday. And, you're diving into, at that point, there was no Google. I'm using things like encyclopedias and books at the library to find out about Mount Everest. And I remember so specifically the flags, the prayer flags that were part of the whole kind of area up in the Himalayan mountains. And I found for the first time about really the millions of people in Asia that had nothing close to a Christian background. They weren't Catholic, they weren't Lutheran, they weren't Protestant, they weren't Baptist. They were wholly something different. And I remember going to CCD and asking my teacher, who was somebody's mom, one of the kids, like volunteer mom, a poor thing. She wasn't even a priest or a nun. And I remember saying things like, so wait a minute, if you're telling me what I think you're telling me, those millions and millions and millions, and now today it's billions of people, are all going to go to hell because they're not in the same camp. They don't believe what we believe. And she said, that's exactly right. And I remember saying, but that's not what God's all about. And like as a kid, that disharmony, that incongruence struck me. And that was pretty much the beginning of me making waves. And I remember saying something along the lines of like, yeah, I'm out. This isn't for me. And I actually gave up on Catholicism on Christmas Day. My mom was none too pleased, but I remember it well. Like, yep, I'm out.
Wow. That's pretty brave. I mean, Christmas Day, that's pretty symbolic, right?
Yeah, it was a big one. It really only reared its ugly head when my wife and I were getting married. She grew up in a non-denominational Christian household. And so when we were getting married, it was the kind of thing where my mom was really strong in her opinions about us needing to do this in a Catholic church. My wife wanted absolutely nothing to do with that, and I could care less. And so it was one of those kind of things where my mom was, she was loud, screaming, huffing, puffing. And it was one of these kind of things where I remember saying, this is not going to happen. But to really punctuate it, we had the story. The story was I was driving in my car having this conversation with her. And I was so upset with my mother at the conversation, I punched the steering wheel, and I had a 5 Series BMW at the time. I actually cracked the BMW emblem on the steering column, which also, of course, housed the airbag. And so when I went to go get it replaced, it was like a $1,600 fix. I was that upset at my mother.
Wow, dude, that's crazy. Yeah, I mean, I grew up Methodist. I converted to Catholicism. I go to Catholic church, but I am very spiritual as far as my belief system. Like I am starting to believe in, different energy sources. I'm believing in a soul slash spirit. I mean, it's a whole different world that I'm getting into, not because it's anything crazy or anything, but it's just like, I'm reading books like Paul Selig, and I highly suggest you guys go read his stuff. It is amazing. He's a channeler. I'm not going to get into it right now, but look up Paul Selig. And there's a couple other authors that I'm forgetting right now, but it's like, I don't know, man. Like I'm just about that feeling, that warm feeling inside that there is something greater than us in the universe. Think about the universe, right? Like when you look up in the sky,
so big,
you see this huge, you see this sky that you can only see, but think past that, right? Like think past that, what's out there. I mean, there's this entire universe of energy, and we're a part of that. And there's just this calming feeling, right? You can't tell me that because I don't believe what the next guy believes that I'm going to go to this hellacious place and burn for the rest of my life. I mean, I refuse to believe that.
Well, I'm right there with you, and I'm not going to in any way, shape, or form disparage organized religion. It's done a lot of really great things for a lot of people. Of course, on the other hand, it's done a lot of horrible things too. The truth of the matter is people need stuff for lots of reasons. And I think there are lots of amazing lessons that come from having a very strong faith-based sort of life. I think it does lots of good. And so it is not my job to tell people that they're right or wrong. I think it's up to individuals to make those decisions. For me, I don't need to go to an organized church to feel spiritual, to feel connected. I will tell you this. If you really want to try something, go to a place like the Grand Canyon and stand there at night. You want to talk about feeling small and insignificant and getting a whole different perspective on life? Go to a place that's so much bigger than you, and you will get some deeper understanding you maybe ever had before.
Yeah, the pyramids, Great Wall of China, things of that. Like there's something in Ohio or something like that where they have it's the Dragon's Mound or something, where on the solstice or however you say it in the summertime, where the mouth of the dragon, it's on a golf course. Like I was watching Joe Rogan, and Graham Hancock, the archaeologist, came on. He was talking about it. It's like in Ohio or something, where the sun meets the earth during a sunset. Like it like matches perfectly with the dragon's mouth. It's insane. Think about that. Like think about the thousands and thousands of years ago, these people in America that were, these Native Americans were making these things that are still here today. Like, this world is so crazy, and our history is so majestic. Like that is so much bigger than who we are, like what we are, right? Our beings.
It's really interesting. The world works in mysteriously twisted ways, right? I had a conversation earlier this week with an incredibly smart guy who was talking about how it's really it's not about servant leadership at all. It's really about understanding that we are all part of just a big fabric, and that our little part is pretty darn small. And, it really is. I mean, like, as much as people might hate him or love him, you look at things like Trump right now, who's creating so much noise. It's a blip in the grand scheme of things. It's like, over, done, move on. And it's hard to remember that sometimes. It really is.
Absolutely. I could talk to you all night, Brian. Like, seriously, we hit on some things I don't usually hit on, but I love the conversation. How can people connect with you?
There are a bunch of ways to connect with me. I would tell you the easy one to remember is my main firm, which is called SquarePlanet. I want you to think round Earth. That's our presentation company where we help individuals and organizations really get those strong messages built. So just check us out at squareplanet.com. The other one is for my book. That website is standforyourbeliefs.com. Stand, the word for, as in FOR, standforyourbeliefs.com. And then, of course, just check out Brian Burkhart, LinkedIn. A couple keywords would be things like SquarePlanet, Phoenix, etc. And, I love new friends.
Well, you just reminded me something with your company's name, the SquarePlanet. So I was listening to Simon Sinek and his book, and he said something that just reminded me of something right now. And I'm going to leave the listener right now thinking about this. How we talked about earlier in the episode where society basically influences our decisions and our behaviors. Like, think about back in the day, Christopher Columbus era, when everybody thought the world was flat. Everybody thought the world was flat. Nobody went anywhere because they were scared they were going to fall off the face of the earth. And then it took one guy to go, sail and find the Americas and crush that myth. Like, think about that. Like, we're not far removed from that. I mean, it's insane.
Well, of course, I couldn't agree more. That was a guy who stood for something. His belief led to his action. He believed the earth was round, and he said, all right, let's do it. So we put a team together, a couple of boats, 3 boats, and off they went. And so that's exactly the stuff I talk about all the time. And we talked about this earlier. It takes a certain set, man. It takes you got to have some brass. But that's what this world is all about. No doubt about it.
Brian Burkhart, I want to say thank you for joining. Thank you for going down a couple rabbit holes, brother. This was a great conversation.
Anytime, Trey. You got it, man. It was fun. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
I want to say thank you to Brian Burkhart for coming on the show. I want to say thank you to you, the listener, for downloading. Thank you for hanging out. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this. And I hope this really helps you out. I hope this guides you along the way, and I hope that you awaken and become aware of the people that are around you that could help you out, that could point you in the right direction. All it takes is action, the first step in the direction that you want to go. Like, all it takes is just the curiosity of this might be the way, or this might be better for me, and see where that goes. And it's okay. Like, it's fine. If you fail, you fail. If you don't, you don't. If you succeed, you succeed. And you know what it's about? It's about the journey. And again, I will say that 1,000 times over. It is about the journey. That is the reward. That's the reward. Guys, thank you for listening. Thank you for hanging out. Thank you for the support. Please leave a rating and review wherever you get your podcast from. I love you guys so much. Please check in next week. I have some great episodes lined up for 2020. Yeah, can't wait. All right, guys. I'll talk to you later.